Welcome to AI Horror Stories, where the dead whisper, the shadows grab, and terror never sleeps. Imagine a morgue where blood stains appear from nowhere, corpses sit up to stare, and coal-black hands drag you into the dark. From Georgetown's restless souls to St. Augustine's pleading whispers and Blackwood's devil's vault, tonight we unlock a nightmare so chilling, you'll feel their cold grip long after it ends. Dare to step inside? Let me tell you something, morgue rooms are inherently terrifying places. The silence of death and the cold air there can fill anyone's heart with dread. But the story I'm about to share with you is about a morgue that wasn't just a house of death, it was something that didn't want to let go. This is the tale of the Georgetown Morgue, located in Seattle, Washington, said to be one of the most haunted morgues in America. The story, the morgue that never sleeps. It was 1968, and the Georgetown Morgue was an old funeral home and crematorium. One night, on October 25th, all 9 employees gathered for a business meeting. Suddenly, a few unknown people, perhaps 2 or 3, armed, barged in. They tied up the employees and killed them one by one. No one knows who they were or what their motive was, but after that night, the place was never the same. The bodies were burned in the crematorium, but it said their souls never found peace. When the building shut down and later turned into a haunted attraction, people began experiencing strange things. Visitors reported feeling like someone was walking behind them, soft footsteps echoing, but when they turned around, no one was there. In the basement, where the autopsy room was, people saw bloodstains appear on the metal tables out of nowhere, and along with a cold breeze, they heard faint sobbing. One visitor even claimed they felt a hand on their shoulder, but when they looked back, they only saw a faint, misty shadow that vanished in an instant. The scariest incident happened when a paranormal investigator set up a recording device. For hours, the recording captured nothing but silence, until a voice emerged. It was a low, weeping voice saying, "Get us out of here." When the investigator heard it, their equipment suddenly shut off, and the room's lights began flickering wildly. They never dared to return after that. One more twist. Some say these events are just rumors, but everyone who's been there claims there's a strange energy in the morgue, as if the walls themselves are whispering something. A former employee once shared that, while working there at night, he saw a stretcher slowly moving down the corridor on its own, as if someone were pushing it. He couldn't believe his eyes, but when he approached it, he heard a faint laugh, and then everything went silent. Why is this so terrifying? The fear in this story comes from the fact that this place still feels alive, not just in memories, but in the spirits that seem trapped there. Every sound, every shadow, every chill feels like they're trying to tell you something, or perhaps keep you there. If you ever visit the Georgetown Morgue, remember, even in its silence, a story lurks, and it might be desperate to be heard by you. So, how did that feel? Is your heart still pounding? If you want to hear more stories like this, just let me know. The story, The Whispering Morgue of St. Augustine. In the historic town of St. Augustine, Florida, known for its ancient streets and ghostly tales, there's an old morgue tucked away behind a crumbling hospital that locals refuse to talk about. Built in the late 1800s, it served as a temporary resting place for the dead during a brutal yellow fever outbreak. Hundreds died, and the morgue became a grim warehouse of bodies, stacked like firewood because there wasn't enough time to bury them all. But what happened there in 1893 turned it into a place no one dares to enter after dark. One stormy night, a young morgue attendant named Elias Carter was working alone. His job was simple: log the bodies, prepare them for burial, and lock up before midnight. The storm outside raged, thunder shaking the walls and lightning illuminating the rows of corpses under their sheets. Around 11 p.m., Elias began hearing whispers. At first, he thought it was the wind slipping through the cracked windows, but the sound grew clearer, soft, overlapping voices, like a crowd murmuring just out of sight. He checked the room. Nothing. Just the bodies, still and silent. Then, as he turned back to his desk, he froze. One of the sheets had slipped off a body, a woman, her eyes wide open, staring at him. He hadn't touched her. Shaking, he covered her again, chalking it up to a draft. But the whispers grew louder, angrier, and now he could make out words. "Why are we here? Let us go." His lantern flickered, casting wild shadows across the room, and he swore he saw one of the bodies twitch under its sheet. Panicked, Elias grabbed his logbook to finish and leave, but as he wrote, the pen slipped from his hand. When he bent to pick it up, he saw something that made his blood run cold, a small, pale hand reaching out from under a table, clawing at the floor. It wasn't attached to a body, just a hand, moving on its own. He stumbled back, knocking over his chair, and that's when the lights went out completely. In the pitch black, the whispers turned into screams, shrill, desperate, echoing off the stone walls. When morning came, the hospital staff found Elias curled up in a corner, clutching his logbook, muttering about the hands and the voices. He never spoke a full sentence again and was sent to an asylum, where he died a year later. The morgue was abandoned soon after, but the stories didn't stop. Years later, when urban explorers broke into the decaying building, they found scratch marks on the walls, deep, jagged lines that couldn't have been made by tools. One explorer recorded a video, and in the background, you can hear it, faint whispers, rising into a wail even though the place was empty. Another claimed that as they left, they felt something cold brush their neck, and when they checked later, they found faint red marks, like fingerprints, that faded by morning. The unseen terror. What makes this morgue so horrifying is the sense that something lingers there, something that doesn't just haunt, it wants. The air feels heavy, like it's pressing down on you, and the whispers seem to follow you even after you leave. Locals say that if you stand outside the morgue at night, you can still hear them, soft voices pleading, scratching at the walls, begging to be let out. But no one's ever stayed long enough to find out what they really want. So, how's that for a scare? Did it send shivers down your spine? Let me know if you're brave enough for a third. Here's a third haunting tale to keep your audience on edge, a morgue story so eerie it'll make even the bravest souls hesitate to turn off the lights. The story, The Morgue Beneath the Hill. In the small town of Blackwood, nestled in the foggy hills of West Virginia, there's an old morgue carved into the side of a hill. Built in the early 1900s as part of a coal mining operation, it was meant to handle the frequent deaths from cave-ins and explosions. The miners called it the cold room because of its damp, icy air, but after what happened in 1927, it earned a darker name, the Devil's Vault. It started with a collapse that killed 13 miners. Their bodies were brought to the morgue, mangled and unrecognizable, laid out on slabs for identification. The town doctor, a gruff man named Harold Grayson, worked late into the night with his assistant, Clara, to document the dead. Around 2 a.m., Clara noticed something odd. One of the bodies, a man with a crushed chest, seemed to shift slightly, his arms sliding off the table. She screamed, but Harold dismissed it as her imagination, blaming exhaustion. Then the lights dimmed. Not flickered, dimmed, like something was draining them. A low rumble echoed through the stone walls, not from the hill above, but from beneath the morgue. Clara swore she heard breathing, ragged, wet, coming from the slabs. Harold, stubborn as ever, told her to stop being foolish and went to check the generator outside. That's when it happened. Alone in the room, Clara saw it. Every body on the slab sat up at once. Their heads turned toward her in unison, eyes cloudy and lifeless, mouths hanging open. No sound came out, but their hands, broken, twisted fingers, reached for her. She bolted for the door, but it slammed shut before she could reach it, locking her in with them. The air grew thick, suffocating, and she felt something cold wrap around her ankle, a hand, black with cold dust, pulling her down. Outside, Harold heard her screams and ran back, forcing the door open with a crowbar. He found Clara on the floor, unconscious, her ankle bruised with a perfect handprint that no living person could have made. The bodies were back on their slabs, still as stone, but their heads were still turned toward where Clara had fallen. Harold dragged her out and sealed the morgue, vowing never to return. The town tried to forget, but the stories grew. Miners passing the hill at night reported seeing shadowy figures standing at the morgue's entrance, figures that didn't move, just watched. In the 1980s, a group of teenagers broke in on a dare. Only 2 came back. They said their friend, Tommy, had wandered deeper into the tunnels behind the morgue. They heard him scream, then a sound like rocks grinding together, and when they looked, they saw him being dragged into the dark by something they couldn't see. His flashlight rolled back to them, still on, but Tommy was gone. Search parties found nothing, not a trace. The lingering dread. What makes the Devil's Vault so terrifying is the idea that it's not just haunted, it's a trap. Something under that hill doesn't let go of what it claims. The air inside feels alive, pressing against you, and those who've been near it say they dream of coal-black hands reaching out from the dark, even years later. The morgue's entrance is boarded up now, but on quiet nights, you can still hear it, a faint rumble, a whisper of breath, and sometimes, a scream that cuts off too soon. So, did this one chill you to the bone? 3 stories in, are you still brave enough for more, or do you need a break from the shadows? Let me know.